Hey everyone, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we have the most wonderful Lauren Deters, my amazing sister, who I'm really excited to have on my YouTube channel. I've been interviewing many inspirational leaders from around the country and hopefully world soon. And my sister is someone that I've always been inspired by and saw as a leader. And I've been wanting to interview her because she has such a beautiful background. And so today we are going to be discussing amazing things about Lauren. So, Lauren, can you tell me a little bit about yourself before we dive in to your history and your background?
Yeah, hi sister. I'm also very oddly nervous for this, but yeah, my name's Lauren Deters. Was born and raised in Arizona and just moved back here a few years ago. My husband and I live here with our dog Dutch, who is the cutest 70-pound pit bull lap dog ever.
My best
Um,
friend, too.
and yeah, also like my sister's best friend, seriously. Um, I work for a startup that helps people upskill and continuously learn and just engage in lifelong learning as a practice and habit. And I got my PhD in educational measurement, so I also just like learning all the time. But yeah, it's a little bit about me.
Yeah. So basically she's a genius, guys, just pre everything. She's a genius and I can never describe to anyone what she does for a living because she's so smart. But that's okay. We're going to discuss things that I understand today. So this will be great. So thank you for being here today. So I would love to start in and talk about kind of like I live with you or been around you my entire life, and I've always felt you've always been super balanced in your approach for thinking and intuition. Like I feel like you're pretty prophetic and can kind of intuit things like way ahead of time. But then I also find that you're very, very logical in that sense of non-attachment. And so with that being said, I would love to hear your perspective on mental health in our current world today with having that approach of the intuition and logic.
Yeah, so I'll try to answer it and then just, follow up with other questions if I don't answer it fully. For full disclosure, I also take notes because I hate not being prepared. Um, but I would say the current state of our mental health in the world, at least in the US, obviously I have a very biased perspective in that I'm born and raised here and I don't know a lot of other areas, but we're certainly more open. um, Certainly have come a long way since I think we were little kids, where I think the ideal was to kind of bury it deep down inside and you've got this. And I'm not saying that, sometimes maybe that works for some people, but people are a lot more out in the open. They deal with it out in the open. They talk to others out in the open. And I think that's a really good thing. Now certainly there's a lot of things we can improve, particularly when it comes to marginalized individuals and groups. There's a lot more we could be doing. But I think just given the current state of how we work too, where like our work lives and our personal lives are so enmeshed, I think that's kind of necessitated us talking a little bit more about our mental health, particularly in the workplace. And so to me, that's a really good thing. It's not something that's taboo. Being vulnerable is a strength. So I always say this, but about a lot of things, but I'm cautiously optimistic. Um, so yeah, I guess that's how I feel about it right now. You can ask me tomorrow, maybe I'll have a totally different opinion, but it
No,
feels like we've made progress.
absolutely. No, you're so right. I feel like it used to be such a taboo thing. And now it's like you hear people talk, oh, I'm on this medication or I'm on this medication and I struggle with this, or I'm going to take a mental health day at work. And you hear people say that. And it's like, I really appreciate that. So you did mention that it has become more open. And I feel like that's a beautiful thing. I think that's part of the healing of it is not holding it all in as well. Cause like, I think the more we hold stuff in, the more it just kind of the pressure builds up. So
Yeah.
thank you for that perspective. I also am curious because of like the way you think, do you or how much do you think that our genetics play in our mental health, and what part did the environment play on your mental health growing up and now?
Yeah, so I'll speak kind of objectively from a research point of view and then probably more personally. So objectively, research shows that it's a combination of things. So it is genetics, it is environment. Certainly there are certain mental illnesses that are more predisposed to genetics, like um, schizophrenia or major depression. But it's a combination. So, that's research, long-standing research has shown that, and although we keep uncovering new things. So genetics definitely part of it, environment definitely part of it. Personally speaking, in thinking about like the environment we grew up in, it seemed, I think our parents did a pretty solid job of normalizing it. When they got divorced, they were like, well, let's put the kids in therapy so they can help process this. And,
Mhm.
looking back on that, that was really cool, that
Yeah.
they did that. So from my perspective, like they gave us some tools to deal with it. Certainly environment uh, played a part in, I think, how we were shaped. I deal a lot with anxiety. Some of it's self-imposed. Some of it is, just other things maybe beyond my control. I'm not really sure. Um, but I don't think you can disregard that it's multifaceted and fairly complex.
Absolutely. And I feel like, just to bring it in, because I do talk a lot about it, there's a spiritual side of it. Like, there you are very empathic and sensitive and in touch with other people's stuff. So how much of it is really yourself, and then how much of it is everything outside? So there's also that part that I like to kind of tie into things. And so it is very complex or intricate. So now I really would like to kind of dive into the juicy stuff and the more personal stuff, because I got kind of the more
Oh
logical
no.
questions. But yeah, so I've asked you to be here today as you are my sister, but also one of those inspiring people that has shown um, a lot of resilience and perseverance through great adversity. And I would love for you to just share a little bit about some of the challenges that you've experienced in your life that have changed your life path, and the people in your life who've been impacted by mental health as well. So if you could just elaborate or dive into that a little bit.
Yeah, and if I hedge a little bit, feel free to dig and poke a little and make me
Oh,
open up more. But yeah, I know you
I
will.
will.
Yeah, no, I kind of, I think I was a little, I think I knew it all. I was a little bit of a know-it-all in my early 20s. Well, probably earlier. If you ask mom, I was not the most joyful human being in my high school years. But I thought I had everything, figured out. Going to go to grad school, finish college, go to grad school, go to DC, because that's where, we wanted to live. My partner and I at the time had it kind of just all laid out in my mind. I'm like, oh, I can control this whole path, hubris.
Yeah.
Um, and then the person closest to me at the time, um, really special human being, and someone I'm really grateful that I got to spend time with, took his life. And that was really hard for a number of reasons. One, like he left such a mark on everyone around him. Just such a unique, charismatic individual. Um, and I'm like, I don't understand how anyone could like talk that much and just like bring in a room of people.
Really?
And probably a lot of guilt for me, thinking like, what could I have done better? Um, and I think I think that was the point when I realized I didn't have it all figured out, which is ridiculous because no one has it figured out. You can't control anything. Um, but yeah, I would say that was the biggest turning point for me. And like, okay, I could use some help. Hey,
Yeah.
and recognizing that, when people are struggling with depression or anxiety or something else, you can't just fix it. Like, if you want to be happy, you don't just be happy. That's not how things operate, and that's not how things work. The science
Right.
of the mind doesn't work that way. Um, so yeah, that was pretty hard for me, and it realized I don't have control over everything. It also made me realize the time we have here with the people around us is really special, and we're really lucky to have these people in our lives for however long and however short. But it certainly gave me perspective that like that happened, but things still go on. It's like one of my favorite Robert Frost quotes is he's like, I can sum up everything I know about life in 3 words or something like that. It goes on. And I'm like, okay, fine. It does go on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think with that, it definitely was a shock to my system that I don't know everything. I can't control everything. And I'm certain I'm still working through some of that stuff, but I think at the end of the day, it left me with a lot more gratitude for the special people and humans I get to know in my life, and a lot more compassion for someone on the other end of a phone most of the time. Sometimes I lose sight of that. Like, when you're in the minutia, but at the end of the day, like tomorrow could be our last. And that perspective has been really, I would think pretty helpful in how I go about my day to day. Now, don't get me wrong, my anxiety is like always there. And I'm like, okay, like you could just go away too. That would be great. But
Right.
anytime it gets out of control, that's something I remind myself is like, look at all the really cool people you have in your life. Look at the really cool things you get to build, and tomorrow could be your last. And that's always a
Mhm.
really nice grounding, like, okay, this isn't so bad.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. It sounds like it really has made you a little bit more mindful and appreciative of life in the now, just because sometimes I feel like we take for granted and think it's like you said, we try to control or we're just going to live life, but there's so much power in gratitude. So it's beautiful that that's what kind of came through. I'm also like curious if there's how this impacted or experience impacted your mental health and perspective on life outside of the gratitude. Like, have you seen a shift in your mental health or, perspective on life outside of feeling more maybe mindful and gratitude and aware of, yeah, maybe I have a little bit of anxiety sometimes. So, yeah.
Yeah, I would say I'm definitely more open than I used to be. Certainly, I would say more guarded with most people, although I'm doing this interview, so maybe not so guarded anymore. But like, with like you and my husband and my best friend, you all know me pretty well. I'm much more open. It made me realize that asking for help is a good thing. I
Hmm.
remember shortly after it happened, I'm like, okay, my family's like, maybe you should go into therapy. I'm like, yeah, it's probably a good idea because I do not have the tools to handle and process all of this. And I still go, and it's really great. I think of it as not just self care, but almost like professional development. Like, I want to get better and better and better as a human. And there's always something to work on. Every time I think I made progress, I'm like, oh gosh, one more thing to work on. But it's kind of great. It's a really cool journey for me. So I think if anything, it's probably made me maybe a little softer than maybe I used to be.
Hmm.
I don't know if others would agree, but I feel like I'm a little bit more softer, and I think I'm more easily able to zoom out and see the big picture at the end of the day.
Hmm.
When I get stuck, like even if it's like a little argument about something that doesn't have any like real meaning, with someone, like, okay, does this really matter? No. Okay, then take the loss. It's not a big deal at the end of the day. The relationships are what matter. So I don't know if I really answered your question. I'm kind of rambling
Oh,
right now, but
no, absolutely.
yeah.
I love that. It, okay, now I lost track of thought.
Oh,
Just,
you know what else I was gonna say too? It definitely changed my mind on um like the people around me who like have been more open. I think you've always been more open, and it took me a while to like figure it out. I had to have things happen, and I had to lose people special to me for me to realize like, oh, okay. But I think it's also opened my mind up to like, yeah, medication's fine. Take the medication if you need it.
Absolutely.
There are find other tools. Like I run, like my mental health depends on it because it does. Other people do, maybe go lift weights, they go to the spa, maybe you need medication, maybe you need therapy. Um, but for me, it just made me much more open to all the tools like at your disposal, and all of those things um,
Beautiful.
are okay.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned like asking for help because there's a lot of, if you really look at it, there's a lot of vulnerability and openness in surrendering to asking for help. And that's like the first step, I feel like, in making progress in life too, is like everything's interdependent. We need one another. And I also like that you made a point that it softened you because I've always felt like um with the inflation of mental health and suicide and the rates and all that, I, I felt that there's something behind that. I'm like, there's something behind this. Maybe it's to make this world more compassionate. Like we have all these diseases and illnesses, and this is an internal one that no one can see and understand that people are struggling with. And so it requires a lot of patience for people that aren't experiencing it, and requires a lot of compassion and softness. So I feel like it's actually a beautiful gift to our world that we have people on this earth that are experiencing this so we can soften up a little bit more. So I feel like it's really beautiful that you mentioned that it kind of cracked you open, it made you a little softer. I've always seen you as pretty sensitive, even though you claim yourself as an INTJ, logical, whatever. I've always seen you as someone who can see the large, bigger picture, which I feel like this experience probably expanded it even more, but I've always seen you as pretty sensitive and compassionate. So I can only imagine this cracked you open a little bit more. And this is exactly what our world needs, or can appreciate or benefit from in this moment. So thank you for elaborating on that a little bit.
Yeah,
Um, you've kind of mentioned a little bit of the support you've received over the years, but I would just love to hear a little bit more about what methods have helped or supported you on your mental health journey, just so anyone that comes to watch, you know, uh, they can know what resources to tap into, because not every person's going to have the same experience or use the same resources, but what's worked for you, what hasn't, and yeah, can you dive into that a little bit?
certainly. And I'll couch this in the fact that I feel very privileged. I know that, um, you know, I have resources and access, and I grew up in a, fairly loving family. So some of the things that I have access to, I recognize I'm privileged to have. So just saying that out loud. But certainly what's worked for me is I love exercise. Despite what the pandemic has done to me, I enjoy exercise a lot. Um, like running for me, it's not just about like meeting a goal anymore. I just get out and run. It
Mhm.
honestly, like it, if I start my day that way, it's so great. But any type of exercise, especially at the end of the day, like if I've been really stressed at work, or even if it was a really fulfilling day, but it was a lot of like cognitive load, just going for like a 2 mile walk is like been huge. And the fact that I have time to do that is really special to me. I think also just tapping into the resources of people around me has been great.
Mhm.
I certainly don't open up to that many people, but the people I do open up to are very, you know, kind, compassionate, really good listeners. You're obviously one of these people. But just having really good humans I can turn to at any point in time has been helpful. Onto other things, certainly medications at different points in my life have helped for my anxiety, and not passing out from an anxiety attack. And like learning, like for me, like breathing exercises have helped there too. Um, therapy, again, for me, it's a privilege, but I was able to find someone that was a really good match and has helped me grow a lot. And that's been really great. And then I guess kind of adjacent, but more for the professional side of myself, how to be a better leader, or just human for my team, just doing professional development coaching and that kind of thing. So, um,
Beautiful.
yeah, I think there are a lot of different tools that can work. Journaling, I just started picking up journaling. I'm, like the science side of me is like, I want to see how long, like, I need to do this a certain amount of time to see like if this really, I notice a difference, but I am enjoying it quite a bit. But there are a lot of different things that I think people can turn to, and a lot of different habits I didn't really think about as being like good mental health habits that actually are. So like that reframing has been really, really good.
Beautiful. Yeah, it seems like you exercise a lot of those resources. Like if one doesn't work, you can tap into this one for today or this one. And we have so many resources available. So,
And
yes,
if I go through all of them and at the end of the day, they still don't work, I'm like, you know what? Tomorrow's a new day.
right. And sometimes I feel like we have to like give ourselves that day. Like it's okay to feel like shit, or it's okay to
Yeah.
feel sad today. Like it's like the spectrum of emotions, like I feel like part of like the unconditional love is like accepting when we're in that state. Like you've always told me, it's okay to feel angry, it's okay to feel this, like, so being in this crappy mood, it's like it's okay, it's temporary, it goes on, like you said. So yeah, exercise all your resources, and if it doesn't work, then there's another day. So
Yeah. It's kind
thanks
of
for
like a data point, right? Like at the end
Mhm.
of the day, it's like we try to fix it, like if you're in a
Yeah,
bad mood, but there is a psychologist who describes, I think it's Susan David, who describes it like a data point. I think of it as information. I'm like, okay, I'm pretty angry right now. What is that about? And what is it telling me? And that's really helpful, just to think of it that way. But this idea that you have to be happy all the time, I think is a farce. Um, there's again, because I like just reading, but there's a guy who writes comics um, by the Oatmeal. He has this whole comic that I love. It's about how to be perfectly unhappy. And it's like, I don't have to be happy every day. Sometimes I'm fulfilled. Sometimes I'm finding meaning, in the things that you do. And I really like that kind of perspective on emotions and your day to day. So
I love that. That's really accepting kind of what arises in that moment and being present. And you were talking about being more mindful and grateful. So that kind of ties into that a little bit. Thank you for sharing, Lauren. Um, After sharing that, I would love to know if you have any words of wisdom for those who might be struggling with their mental health, or words of encouragement, or what you would say to someone who's struggling in this moment.
well, the fact that you're asking me for what words of wisdom is a very nice compliment. So thank you. I don't know what I can add to this discussion more than other people, but I think for me, like the biggest thing is, you know, you're worth it. And I know it's really hard and it's hard to feel like the onus is on you yet again, but just tell anyone, just one person you trust that you're struggling. We're all kind of, not siloed, but, as much as we like to think we're in tune with the people closest to us, we're all like running our very busy lives, either with kids, with work, with extracurriculars, or with the challenges and interpersonal struggles going on. But if if you were just to let one person, like one of the closest people, know that you're struggling, that is like the biggest step, honestly. I think just putting yourself out there. Um, and I would say nearly all of the time, not all of the time, but nearly all of the time, people will be glad you told them and will find a way to help you. I don't know what that looks like, but to me, that's what I would say is, even though it's one more thing it feels like a burden that you have to reach out. Sometimes people just don't know.
Yeah.
And if you were to tell them, it would change completely. So I don't know if that's words of wisdom. I think there are others that could probably speak to this a lot more eloquently than myself, but that would be, you're worth it, and just closest person to you, find them and tell them.
Absolutely. There's so much power in like asking for help, or, saying I'm struggling. So, and that to me says I am worth it. So just telling someone I'm struggling is saying I'm worth getting help. So I feel like that's beautiful words of wisdom. And that in itself is I am worth it. So that's perfect. Um, what is one thing we could all do to support not only ourselves, but those who are suffering with mental health issues around the world? Like one thing we could all do, whether it's like the Dalai Lama, like compassion, but with your background, your history, and your mental health, and then your intuitive and logical side, like what would you say?
I don't know. I'll speak selfishly, and then I'll speak what I think we could do. But one thing that I've been wanting to do more and is volunteer. So volunteer, give back to someone else. I think yes, it will give back to you and make you feel better about giving your time to someone else, maybe less fortunate or than a cause that's higher than yourself. But it'll just make the world a better place if we all just thought about others for a bit. So selfishly, I say that because it's something I want to do a better job of doing. I also think we could all just do a little bit better job of listening, myself included. I think a lot of times we hear or we're preparing a response when someone's talking, but if you were listening, you'd probably hear a lot more of what wasn't being said. And I think if we could all just listen a little bit more, we'd probably be better off. You know, where there's so much divisiveness, and I always find that there's a lot more in common with people than I realize. But it's really easy to have that like knee-jerk reaction,
Mm-hmm.
and see a lot more, I guess, black and white when there really is nuance and things like that. And you can only get that if you're listening. So yeah, that's probably what I would say.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Lauren. Two things. She's been volunteering since she was like, I don't know how old. So she's always been good about volunteering everyone. And number two, she's the world's greatest listener. She's like the number one person that I go to, and I know many other people go to. So very humble. And this is how you know she's a leader, because she's like, oh, I could still work on that when I'm like, really? Because that's one of your best qualities is you're a good listener. So yes, I really appreciate that. I actually do. And it's like listening with intention and presence, you know, without the intention to respond. So I feel like that's just deep, profound healing listening. I feel like listening to someone is healing in itself, like just being there, you know. Like the times that I've called you and been crying or been upset and you don't say anything, I'm like, that's just healing in itself. You know, sometimes we just need someone to just be there. So there's so much healing and support in listening. So I really appreciate that you share that. And I think our whole world could benefit. That's a communication style, right? We could all we could all benefit from that. So thank you for yeah, thank you for sharing your background, your history, and the resources that you tap into, and the words of encouragement. I feel like everyone could benefit from that. Is there, you know, we have a few minutes left to kind of discuss whatever we would like to discuss. Is there any other words that you'd like to share with my YouTube platform, or anything else that you'd like to say before we hop off?
You know, I've been reading a lot lately, like finally just getting back into my books again, and it's feeling really good. I love learning. But the one thing I've learned is the more I learn, the more I realize I'd know nothing.
So good.
And I think if we all just talked about that more, you know, we all feel like we can't just like let our guard down. So you know, you don't want to say like, wow, I still got a lot more to learn. You know, I'm reading a book about, you know, the birth of cells and how he discovered cells. And I'm like, okay, well, that's a whole world I know nothing about. Um, but I think that's the cool thing. We don't have enough time to learn all the things there are in this world. But I think if we all kind of acknowledge that and realize we're all doing our best, and we gave open and honest feedback to one another and realize there's still so much room to grow. Um, I don't know. Again, cautiously optimistic self is thinking we'd all be better off.
Absolutely. Absolutely. The more I learn, the less I know. I love that. I love that quote. So it's like really though, it's a little scary, but also like very humbling too. Like
Oh,
it's
it's
very
humbling.
humbling.
Yeah.
So thank you for that. I would love to share, below for my YouTube people that visit, if I could share your LinkedIn. So if they wanted to get a hold of you, if you're open to that, if I could share your LinkedIn profile below. Awesome. So everyone who's watching or who gets to watch this amazing Lauren, my sister, I'll share her information below if you ever want to connect with her, talk about mental health or the logical stuff that she does at her work that I don't have any idea about. So you can talk to her about
It's
that.
mostly my awesome team. I'll just plug my amazing team and company.
Yeah. So thank you so much for being here today, for being vulnerable, for being open and sharing your journey with us, your resources, your tools that you use. And thank you for sharing inspiration with other people who are on this path as well, Lauren. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, sis. And thanks for, yeah, thank you for hosting this and making this just a normal conversation topic. This is super cool and really good progress.
Absolutely. Thank you. Have a blessed day, sis.
All right. Bye.